All right. Hey, everybody. We're about to get started. Cool. So hello, welcome to the new normal, a series of virtual discussions intended to help us get out of our comfort zones and debate different perspectives of the future. My name is Todd Terrazas, and I'm your host. On this episode, we have Marie Smith giving a talk on data-driven approach for reimagining institutions. Marie is the CIO and co-founder of Data360, which specializes in providing a platform as a service for AI machine learning initiatives, projects, products, and services on Google Cloud and Microsoft Azure. She works with governments, enterprises, corporations, startups, and small medium businesses who are rapidly growing or pivoting their offerings by implementing new and innovative data models. Following her talk, we'll go right into the breakout rooms for 20 minutes. Afterwards, we will return to this main room for an open discussion. If you're watching this episode on Facebook, you can join us in Zoom by visiting thenewnormalseries.com. Now, without further ado, here's Marie Smith.
Hey, everyone. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So today I'm going to talk about data, how to be data-driven, and cover some basic concepts. Let us know if you have any questions in the chat during the Q&A. And we'll get started. Todd, can you see my screen okay? Let's see. Share.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, you can't see my screen?
Oh, I can't see your screen yet, just you.
Just me, okay. There we go. I think I'm sharing now. Okay. So, so this talk is called Data Driven. It's a process for reimagining American and global institutions. And we're going to talk about a tale of two worlds, kind of the world of the past and the world of the present. And the world of the past is really kind of a front-end world, right? Where all the decisions are made for you, they're put together for you, they're presented to you, and there's sort of not much you can do with it or share about it or sort of ask. You can just kind of, you can share in a basic way, but you can't really manipulate or create anything. Versus the present, where we have this kind of new creation economy where you can do things with data. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. So here are some details about that world, right? And so in data, we're really transitioning, and in the world, we're really transitioning between business intelligence, which is kind of what happened, and data science, which is what should happen. And the difference is business intelligence, as you see here, there's a lot of different descriptions, but business intelligence has a past lens. It's descriptive. It's about, it's kind of assuming the world is chaotic, and then we have to decide what it means, right? And then, you know, we're going to look at the past to try to determine the future. And what we found in tech and in all kinds of industries is that patterns actually are not just driven on the past, they actually emerge immediately into the present and on into the future. And so data science has emerged. And so it's like, why? What will happen? What should I do, right? So we're looking for patterns, not just based on the past, but we're looking for patterns in the immediate present and on. And we're looking at how we explore data. So it's focused more on capturing, right? And so to be data driven, kind of one of the first principles is you need to capture things. You need to put sensors, and you need to have people describe things, and you need to make logs and all these things. You need to gather data. That's one of the biggest principles you have to do to be data driven, right? And then we're exploring, we're experimenting, we're being visual. And most importantly, we're looking at how to predict what the future can happen based on patterns, how to be prescriptive, how to prescribe solutions, and how to be preventative. And these are the things that now most companies, bigger companies, Fortune 500s and global companies are focused on. How do we begin to do this? And right now, even your phone, your financial portfolio, your email, your social media, all these things are working on these principles of data science. Probably not aware, but everything is shifting in this direction. So what does that all mean? Well, the internet is not just the World Wide Web. It's actually like a fire hose, right? It's constantly spitting out data, right? So getting information off the internet is like taking a drink from a fire hydrant, right? It's almost impossible, but now we actually have computers and systems and software to actually manage this experience. And so what that looks like is those come in the form of APIs. And so we're going to talk a little bit about APIs because that is the non-web way of getting data from the internet. And it's the part where you can begin to focus on how to create your own applications with all the data from the internet. So say, for example, you work with Google's API. You don't have to just take Google's interface and use it the way that they have it for the public. You can actually create new things with it, with the data behind it, I should say. And so there are a lot of different APIs out there. There is what's called rapidapi.com. There's another site called Programmable Web.com, and you can see there's a lot of different types of APIs, right? So some of you guys are probably familiar with URL shorteners and that sort of stuff, but NASA has APIs, football has APIs, finance has APIs, there's scanners. I mean, there's just so many different things that have APIs. So just tons and tons and tons of APIs out there. You can look at rapidapi.com as a source and programmableweb.com as a source. So basically, it's like looking at the matrix, right? For those of you, I guess that's kind of an old movie now. But basically, the point is all this data is streaming everywhere, right? And it's just out there for people to use and utilize in all kinds of different ways. And some of those become very, very important for reimagining how this world works. So it doesn't quite look like the matrix in real life, but the same concept, right? So this is one of the ways it can look, right? So this is an application that aggregates data and sort of talks about different terms and kind of where all the different pieces are happening on the internet. This is in a 24-hour period. So this particular query was about debit cards and credit cards and that sort of stuff. And with these particular terms, there were a lot of different platforms that were publishing at the time. So you can kind of see how the data gets visualized so that we can start to strategize and look at how to build an application around credit cards or debit cards, which is what this client was doing with us. It also looks like a spreadsheet, right? So instead of it being pretty and kind of all in the web, you can actually kind of read what's getting published on the internet, what's getting published around the world for any particular subject. So you can type in ice cream and you can see everything in the world that's happening around ice cream, all the top subjects, all the top influencers, all the top blog posts, all the top videos in every language possible. Anybody who's saying anything about ice cream in the time period you're capturing data from an API, you can get it. So that's fun. So this is kind of what happened, right? So, you know, in the beginning, we just kind of made the web, right? The front end was everything. And then, you know, starting around 2006, which is now almost 15 years ago, all these APIs started coming up because we started to realize that the hierarchical approach, right? So which is, you know, we're in the physical world still living in this hierarchy to some extent, right? Except for now we're all working from home. So it's a little more egalitarian, or a lot of us are working from home, I should say, all of us. APIs are kind of the same thing. There are the websites that publish data, and then there's the data itself. And so you can actually take this rising movement, right? It's now well beyond 20,000 APIs, right? So you can type in your favorite brand, your favorite anything, and type in API and then have one. Even shoes APIs, even flower APIs. I mean, you name it, there's an API for it. So this is not something that's going away, right? So this is something that is being put out there so that finance teams can look at companies and look at new ideas more rapidly instead of just waiting for kind of this trickle down effect, right? So this is the more accessible way of being able to build applications and build institutions and look at how things should be happening. So this is Programmable Web. They have a directory of about 23,000 APIs. When you can get a copy of this presentation, it has links in it as well, but it just talks about how APIs work, where you get the data, how you get a model, how does it relate to the subject of the hour, right? So the subject of the year, right? Coronavirus. So, you know, you can find APIs in a lot of different places. So let's take a look at COVID-19 data. So this is kind of the traditional search engine, right? So this is Bing. And basically with search engines, you know, they're a 20-plus-year-old concept. And it's an old school concept that just tries to present everything to you and guess what you need, right? So it's going to give you maps and stories. Same with so that's Google. Same with Bing. Everybody's going to try to give you kind of the basic information, but there's a lot of other information available in the new school way, right? So there's all kinds of APIs, all kinds of different places you can find data, and then you can present a view that may be important to the world, that could be used on the news, that can be put in applications. And then you can go get that documentation, learn how to put it into a system, or grab it and put it into a spreadsheet, or work with a programmer and put stuff together and kind of say, hey, what would I like to do with this data? How can I help my neighborhood? How can I help my planet, right? So one of the things we had talked about in a previous AI LA event was Australia, when the fires are going, I guess they might still be going, but when the fires were going, people started building their own applications to talk to each other and to share information because they couldn't wait on the government to come up with things, right? Sounds familiar, right? So we can't necessarily wait on the authority to come up with something for us. We can actually grab that data, share it with our friends, share it with our family, help our neighborhood, help our association, help the different people we know more quickly than the government can. And then, you know, on top of that, right, since it's AI LA, you can take that and load it into different systems with Google, with Microsoft, with Amazon. All those companies will happily help you figure out how to build an application. You just have to raise your hand and say so. And there are plenty of classes and learning paths and all that fun stuff. And then Data 360, we just collaborated with iFund Women and Caress to actually do something with this data for COVID-19. So we have a project called COVID-19 Search. And you can kind of see what we're doing with the data. So we're looking at, you know, how to help people recover with jobs, education, health, emergency, centralized databases, government innovation, right? Because this is not happening fast enough, and it's needs some more people to contribute. So the question is, what will you do, right? What are you passionate about? What do you want to know about? It could be anything, right? And you could take the API, right, the application programming interface of anything, any site, and any brand, any entity, and then add AI to it to explore a new way of looking at things and to actually help service people. So thank you so much, and check out COVID-19 Search. And if you want this presentation, you can go to bit.ly/datadriven-data360. Thanks so much.
All right. So yeah, right now it's open discussion. So if you have any more questions for Marie, we're all ears. How was your breakout group, Marie?
Hi, it was great.
Nice.
Hi.
Marie, I have a question.
Yes.
Just the COVID-19, if you can leave it in the chat, but I am doing a speech at my Toastmasters Club about data and COVID-19, because a lot of people will say, oh, you know, it's like, there are a lot of spins about data and we shouldn't trust the data, and the COVID, you know, still a lot of people believe that COVID-19 is just a flu, another flu, right?
Right.
And so I want to do my own research and find out really whether, you know, people are spinning the data and I want to know what kind of data I can trust and how I can use data to come up with my own conclusion instead of just listening to all the rhetorics.
Yeah. That the repository at rapidapi.com with the COVID-19 data does have a lot of different sources where it's a lot more than what you get in the search engine, and so you can just use that to your heart's content. And pull out, and they tell you, where all the sources are, and who's generating data. Also, I found that if you type in coronavirus data or COVID-19 data in Twitter, and you look at the videos and the photos, there's just tons and tons of people publishing all kinds of things. And that you can capture that information. So there are tools that translate Twitter searches into different data streams and different spreadsheets.
I can give a selfless plug. There's a site called CovidNow.com that you can use that tracks across the Johns Hopkins data set and also scrapes. Can somebody mute? We're getting echoes.
I think somebody needs to mute. Yeah.
Hello? Nope, still hearing it. There we go. Thank you. So that helped a lot. Thank you. Anyways, COVID Now basically is the main data repository that pulls on is Johns Hopkins data for COVID, but it also has a scraper that goes around and deals with county and state level data that's being pulled across the United States. So you want to check out covidnow.com. It's free to use, and feel free to jump in and out of it. It was actually done by a 17-year-old kid that I'm affiliated with or know pretty well. So
very cool.
Check it out, but it's a pretty cool site. He's done a good job.
Very cool. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I basically look through, I use like Programmable API, and I've also been checking out the Rapid API. And in relation to just COVID-19, one of the things that I'm curious about with, anyone's who's been accessing the data, like, are you able to actually get actual death certificate files? Because that's proof, where one can actually see someone died from COVID.
I don't know. There are public records in county registrars. I'm not sure what all the regulations are around individualized death certificates, but there are records around that, around those things. So some places may not have them digitized. We actually had an experience like that with the state of California, the ACLU. You actually have to get a Public Records Act request because not every county in the United States is digitized. And so you have to basically do a Public Act request, which is a legal request that anyone in the public can make. Or if it's the federal government, a Freedom of Information Act request, and then get that data and digitize it and then manipulate it how you want to see fit or work with it as a visualization. But you can track it down. And then you can also make requests for from the county health departments for that data. A lot of the counties are publishing that data on the health departments about who's dying and but death certificates are on the county level as well.
I think I was just curious, just trying to understand, the cause of death, whether for like in a death certificate, they normally indicate, just the cause, and I'm wondering whether the name used is COVID-19 or something else, because there's so many names to COVID-19 now that it's hard to actually tell. There
are some reports about the diagnoses being reclassified with different hospitals and reports to the county records. because it may have been classified as a heart attack or it may have been classified as pneumonia, especially early on when people didn't have that much information about COVID-19. So yeah, there is, I think, probably once this is a little bit more controlled, there will be a reclassification of a lot of things, because right now we're just in panic, sort of troubleshoot mode with COVID-19, especially when it comes to diagnoses and especially when it comes to the diagnostic tool, the therapeutics, and all the different pieces of how the ecosystem of this condition works and how it affects society. So that's not uncommon in data. It happens all the time. It even happens with commercial products. Things get reclassified, they get rethought about, and that's the kind of world we're in right now. There isn't like the olden days, right, where there's like a encyclopedia and it tells you like this is what it is, because we have real data now.
Share deaths from the CDC. I don't like sharing data usually, but it sounded like people were interested.
Yeah,
yep.
That'd be great.
Yep, doing it right now. Where's the chatty chat? Chat. All right. So this is a good source for deaths by sex, age, and state. It's not by county, I don't think, but it's a pretty good source.
Yeah, and you could, typically that's what happens, right? You have to add a lot of different sources coming together, match those up, and then perform an analysis.
Yep. No, I can break it down further, but that's why I'm willing to share. Sorry, I'm eating sushi right now.
No worries.
But it's not bad.
I have a question. I think it's really interesting looking at data that is hard facts, right? Like how many deaths there have been with coronavirus to comparing, looking at data with things that may be subjective, like in entertainment. So for example, let's say a new song comes out. The sentiment towards that song may change over time with popularity. I mean, I worked in music a long time and had a lot of success, but also know the first time I heard Black Eyed Peas, Where Is the Love? I thought it was trash, right? And so,
that happens. My dad felt the same way about Run DMC, by the way, so.
How do you negotiate the old school and new school way of business, right?
Yeah.
To not lean into cancel culture and change something before it has time to breathe and evolve in the universe? Like, what are your recommendations there?
Yeah, so, having a longitudinal approach is probably best when it comes to data in general, and that's just a scientist in me talking, because, and the old person in me talking, right? Because there are, that's kind of what you learn, right? Is that you can have kind of your opinion for now and then still continue to gather more data, right? And try to figure out how things are evolving. In a scientific way, we try to stay as neutral as possible. I've also been in entertainment where you are, advocating for your side, right? But, the question, the longevity is going to be a question, I think, for this time period. Because we actually had a client that does works in child abuse prevention. They had a bunch of scientists, and we had a real big argument, right? Debate about the authority level of studies versus public data, and which one's right? And the question is, the answer is both are right? They're different frames, they're different lenses. So probably what I would say the easiest way to cope with it is to realize there are different lenses, and you can speak to those lenses and how they differ and how they're the same. And then, the same with music, right? So, if you listen to something from the 90s, I know that I thought was great at the time, and I listen to it now and I go, that's trash. Because it was cool for me when I was a kid, right? But it didn't meet a standard. And there's some songs where you didn't think they were necessarily going to be a standard, but they are. They do have a lot of longevity, right? Even though they were still very poppy back then. So it's just really speaking to, there's kind of like the footnotes in the study, right? So how do you kind of say, well, this is when it came out, this is what it was, and this was the context, and this is why it was important, but now it's just not. It's not important at all anymore, and it doesn't have longevity because of X, X, and X, right? And so I think that's one of the best ways you have the ability to sort of address differences and differences over time, right? And then it also depends on who's paying, right, and who's consuming and all that stuff. So
that's great. Thank you.
This also lends itself to data scientist rule number 1: don't throw away data. Right?
Never throw away data.
Never throw away data, and that's the bigger problem. Because as you see things evolve, if you see things bloom, without that forensic history, you're not going to see that trend. You're not going to see that growth. You're not going to see any kind of change. So the number 1 rule is don't throw away data, and that's the hardest thing to get people to realize.
Right. Well, that's why, Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Facebook and Tesla and many others have invested in this infrastructure, right? And the internet infrastructure, more satellites, more fiber, more storage, all that sort of stuff. They've openly told us, hey, we know our websites are going to go away. Eventually, other people are going to make other things that are more important, but we have put together the infrastructure to hold the new internet. We put together the cloud platforms, we put together all the servers, we have all the data. We can start to create other things that help people create more variety and put people into the economy faster, in the digital economy faster.
Yeah, the other thing that people...
EPA disposed of some critical information a few years ago when the administration first came to power, which was very unfortunate. So there needs to be steps, as you say, to value that data. That is for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the question, there are a lot of rogue agents that are saving things out there, right? And thank God we have also the Wayback Machine and things like that that can harness a lot of this data, right, and keep it alive. But yeah, there's a lot, there's kind of this lens of library science, right? And what happens to the world's information, right? And I almost feel like, we need a CERN-like facility for data that keeps everything archived and put into the right place. I don't know how that would happen yet, but it's really important that we preserve all of our perspectives. I know, I've heard of temples in India where they preserved data and information for 70,000 years, supposedly on palm leaves in oxygen low environments. So there's that kind of weird stuff. But there's also, there's a lot, we've just created so many data artifacts in the last 20, 30 years that it's getting very interesting.
The other part that's important is the fact that you don't know where ground truth is going to be found in your data sets. You might in fact start with one data set and find your ground truth is completely somewhere else that you didn't even really fathom. So that's the other part of this whole thing. When you start looking at looking for correlations and start running some deep learning algorithms, you don't know what data might have influenced and given you truth. So that's another part of the reason why not throw away data.
Yeah, have you guys taken a look at Data Lake and QuickSight?
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I just started diving into it, and it's a really valuable tool to investigate.
Yeah, Amazon has a lot of new rapid prototyping tools that are really great. Just for you to ingest data, not have to know anything. And then, Amazon also released a new low-code tool, which I'm blanking on the name, where you can also build apps from data. And so there's a lot of tools that are out there. Is that QuickSight too?
Yeah. So Data Lake is where we ingest a bunch of data from all these different sources.
Yeah.
And then QuickSight to display the data.
Yeah.
Marie, I had a question.
Yeah.
as a data scientist, kind of a few questions. From what I'm hearing is most of what you're doing from a processing standpoint on the cloud and AWS is your CSP of choice?
No, actually, we're partnered primarily with Microsoft. We did build a lot of our early work on AWS, and why I like AWS is because it is inexpensive to build a lot of prototyping. So, and they do have a lot of rapid prototyping. Google does also.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think, you know, any one of them is necessarily better than another, except the thing that Amazon has is you can just kind of dip your toe in and dip out really quick without a lot of complication, without a lot of tutorials, without a lot of everything. I think that's kind of the easiest one from a just rapid prototyping standpoint.
And do you actually roll your own? Will you do PyTorch, Cafe, TensorFlow work yourself, or do you like a pre-canned something on the cloud provider?
Yeah, I even use managed services. I'll string a bunch of integrations together just to get the data processed, to kind of see how it works before I dip into native cloud development or code, like hard coding something. And in fact, I'm not a big fan of hard coding, just because things change so quickly. Now there's some things over time with our company we have hard coded because we've seen now a pattern over millions of people or tens of thousands of people. And then we can say, okay, we're gonna hard code that in, that's a lock, right? But there's not a lot of stuff that we see as a complete lock. It's very hard. You know, I'm sort of anti-waterfall, right? It's very hard to say this is what people want because they don't really know what they want. So it's just kind of like, you know, the goal, you kind of, just like, you know, kind of the lean startup, you sort of present things. So we do a lot of rapid prototyping. We present things.
A lot of serverless?
Put everything together. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just asking, so we're moving a lot to serverless architecture. I'm wondering how much you've done that, or if you agree with it, or how you feel about it.
I think a lot of it's actually really cool. I mean, I know a guy who runs his whole network on serverless for like $50 a month, and he runs like a multi-million person.
It's on demand. It's just
he serves millions of people, and it's you know, I like it.
I have a different opinion on serverless. So I've done a lot of development. I'm currently a PhD student, and just looking into, you know, like serverless, I think is an interesting way because it's an interesting tool. I look at it as a tool because it just helps you, you know, run your algorithms faster, and it depends on, you know, if you have a real-time application, like for example, something that you want to change on your content, but then that kind of makes it more prone to errors, meaning as you're, you know, as you're running your application in, you know, in real time, and you're relying on some data and you're processing it really fast, then you have other, you know, parameters that may, you know, may affect the quality of the data itself. So I think also a lot about, you know, you have, pardon?
I said you're totally right. You just need to architect it properly.
Yeah, you have to be very, very careful. Very, very careful.
Yeah, one point that I just wanted to add on top of, you know, as you're thinking about just data, the first step for me, it's just the model. So you can get a bunch of data, you know, from all these sources, but as a, you know, organization or institution, if you don't have your own unique data model, then everything else is going to be useless. So apart from, you know, saving your data, which is, you know, maybe a whole bunch of everything, you know, it can be unstructured in some certain way, then the first step is just to ensure maybe that it is structured in some way, and having a model or different models depending on your application before now you either choose to share it or open it up as an API for other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would say, you know, we actually created a UML for our system, and so, you know, there are we have a lens that we look at data through, that drives our system. That's why we don't do a lot of hard coding, is because we're looking at how our system classifies data more than we're looking at how the data is codified into a UX or a UI, and how it runs on different pattern and fact-finding pieces. And so there's a lot of different things that can happen with data. So again, like you were saying, and also like Donnie was saying, there's a lot of different pieces you have to sort of think about, but you can actually just download the data and just start thinking about it, looking at it and exploring it, and then discussing kind of what systems you want to build. You don't always have to have the final end in mind, right? The goal is to kind of get started and look at it. And also, what Gary was saying about preserving data, right? Just preserving it is good.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna interrupt real quick. Yeah, so we're doing a serverless DynamoDB integration right now, and it's super complicated to think about all the moving parts and how you structure your database, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and I see in the chat here, Winona was bringing up hi Winona, Winona was bringing up the advocacy about behavioral. So yeah, so there are a lot of digital tools around capturing behavioral stuff. It's getting the practitioners to participate in the capturing, or getting the people, in this case, the people that are receiving the care to speak and capture their experiences. And that's something that's sort of new for people in general in the public is we have a lot of that behavior now because of social media, but we need to also have that behavior for other things, like things that are really important, like healthcare, quarantine stuff, traffic, right? That's why Waze is actually really cool, because people report and capture data. So capturing data is a big piece of everything. And yes, Mongo serverless and all those serverless databases can be very complicated.
Yep, yes they are.
Yeah. A lot of stuff is complicated. So I don't encourage anybody to be overly complicated. Data can go into a spreadsheet, right? And you can model things in a spreadsheet. So.
Oh, please don't say that.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know. I'm betraying my kind. I'm betraying the other engineers. I'm sorry, engineers.
I now have to sage my office. Damn it.
I'm sorry. All right. Anything else?
No, I got a lot out of this, and I thank you guys so much.
Thank you all. Yeah. Thank you, Marie Smith, again for an amazing talk and this discussion. Next week we'll be back. We have a talk on well-being tech and AI, unlocking human potential with artificial intelligence by Nicole Bradford. And so next Thursday at noon, we'll be doing this all over again with another interesting talk. And so, yeah, please enjoy the rest of your day, your week. Be safe out there, and we'll hope to see you soon.
The list? I don't know if I'm on a list.
Yeah, well, I just put you can find our calendar on joinai.la. And so
got it.
Please join our mailing list or just add on our Google Calendar to your calendar. And that's a great way to follow us. But yeah, we'll be shooting off an email hopefully tomorrow with more information about our upcoming events.
All right. I really enjoyed this conversation with everyone in the breakouts. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, good to connect with you guys.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Todd.
No problem, guys.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
Bye.
Bye-bye.